draw the attention of members to point number 11, which is we're in line. Francis.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair and Councillors. I'd just like to take you through the short presentation which is just currently being handed out. It shouldn't take too long. Sorry. Right, so this is the third quarter. It's the report for the Auckland Council Group. You would have had the parent report which presented to this committee last month on the 19th of May, and the individual CCOs would have reported to the CCO Governance and Monitoring Committee on the 7th of June. So this is the consolidated result. Just a few reminders. This is the results that we're reporting here. We're reporting them against the phased LTP, so they're the actual, that's not revised budgets or anything. It's against the phased LTP, because that's what we have to report against in the annual report, is the long-term plan. And then just moving on to the actual statement of financial performance. Overall, at an overall level, we're pretty much on track. We have got some fees and user charges which are slightly below target, primarily due to some lower volumes at the ports, and some other income is slightly higher, which is due to vested assets being above what we budgeted. And then at on an operational expense side, there are some other operating expenses which are just running behind track, mainly due to timing, and so we're expecting they'll be pretty much on target at the year end. And then the final one is that we always have that big number at the bottom that says net other losses. As we've reported previously, those are non-cash items that we don't budget for, but it's related to the valuation of derivatives, which is a non-cash item. So just as I mentioned, at a gross revenue level, generally we're on target. There's no significant issues around that. And the same at a group operating expense level. The financial statement, which is the balance sheet, again, that is tracking as expected generally. We're reporting against what was there at 30 June 2015. So we're comparing the movement for the period. And those are all tracking right. I mean, not fixed assets, non-current assets is really just due to the movement in the CapEx, our CapEx program. And a current, on the liability side, the difference is really coming through as borrowings, and also the effect of the movement that we had, the non-cash movement of that 377 million around the derivatives, so that also flows through here. So that's why that's going up. Just moving on to the capital program, which is a significant expenditure. As was the case at the half year, we are still tracking well behind budget. We're about 32% behind our revised budget. And for the full year, we're forecasting to be about 19% behind budget. It's about 336 million. I think it's just important to note that that delivery is against the LTP, so we expecting to be about just under 20% behind with that. Just looking at the capital expenditure against the various themes, both transport and water care are behind and will continue to be significantly behind, and it's really due to just design and tendering processes and also some scope changes. At Watercare, as I reported last quarter, they basically pulled a stop on their program and just did a good reassessment as to whether the projects were needed, they were correct, and they were appropriate. So those projects are now starting again. That they will be completed, but just over a longer period, so they'll happen in the next financial year rather than this year. And then again, there are just in the other areas, parks are also behind, and that's due to particularly some engagement with the community that's taken a little longer. Stormwater is on track, and the other areas is really around the commercial property and Panuku, where some land purchases, etc., are behind schedule and will probably remain so at the end of the year.
Wonder why.
And ports, they're also behind, and that's due to, as you're aware, the fact that the wharf didn't proceed, wharf extensions. Just one of this, the last quarter when I presented was the first time I showed this graph, which is really where we're trying to give you a bit of an indication around what is important to the credit rating agencies. We just wanted to keep you abreast of that. And the key indicator here for us is how much headroom we have in our debt management portfolio. Obviously, we're running slightly behind where we were at the end of last year, and also where we're tracking against where we expected to be in the LTP, and that is due to the CapEx program being behind schedule. Obviously, as we spend that money over the next couple of years, we'll just track up again and be back where we were expecting to be. But so we have limited headroom when we look at our overall CapEx program, and so we've got to just continue to manage that carefully.
So does that include Watercare and?
Yep, it's group. This is a group report, correct, Councillor Wood. These are the Treasury Management Prudential Limits, which we're required to have in our LTP. They're key ones that are set by statute. And again, I just wanted to, these will be reported in the annual report, so it's just quite important for you to be aware of where we're tracking with those. And as far as these go, we're all on track, well within our limits, so there are no concerns currently with the prudential limits. And then just at an overall level, as I said, we're really much on track. The key thing is obviously that the CapEx is slightly behind schedule, but overall, we're well within our expectations. There's nothing that's of concern, particularly to me at this stage. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Quacks.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on page 104 and 105 of the attachment, there's three areas there for expenditure and current liabilities and non-current liabilities around employee benefits, employee entitlements. Can you just explain that to me? Because why are those in three different places, and why? What is the difference between the benefits and the entitlements?
Councillor Quacks, the benefits are the actual salaries and wages, the expenses. So those are the ones that are sitting in the statement of financial performance. In the statement of financial position, when we are required in terms of the accounting standards to provide for things like annual leave entitlements, etc. So those are the ones that are sitting under the liabilities as called employee entitlements. And they include things like if there's any excessive sick leave, that's probably due, but that's very limited in our case. We don't provide much for that. But it's mainly around annual leave entitlements, etc. And those you have long and short term, because there's some that people will take in a year. 'Cause some people have, in some of the legacy councils, have long-term leave entitlements, and so we have to provide for those on an ongoing basis.
So it's a provision but not spent?
Yes, it's not spent, but obviously if people take leave, then it washes out. So obviously our key focus is to try and get people to take
So
leave.
our entire budget for staff is over $1 billion?
Well, you'd have to realise that those employee entitlements that are sitting in the balance sheet, they carried over from year to year, so we would have had an opening balance and a closing balance, and so there's the movement you have to look at is, and that moves throughout the year because it depends when people are taking leave. So that generally is fairly static over the longer term, because we try and manage that to ensure that people take leave regularly, because they should do from a health and safety perspective as well. And certainly management have a focus on ensuring that people do take regular leave. So the actual expense is actually sitting in, is what's sitting in the statement of financial performance. And those ones that are sitting on the balance sheet, the liabilities, have already flowed through the statement of financial performance. So they're not on top of, they've already happened, they've already gone through there.
Thank you.
Councillor Casey.
Well, the same graph, Francis, can you just define what we mean by grants, contributions and sponsorship in relation to the group? What's the difference between each of them?
Okay, so we have grants that, I just want to check, so you're talking about
I'm on the
the
same
expenses or the
Expenses.
expenses? So as a council, we provide grants to various organisations. We obviously provide sponsorship as well. And so that's what those are. So we would, and also in terms of certain regulations, we might be able to provide contributions to for example, just trying to think of a...
Local board grants.
Sorry?
Board grants and things like that.
Yeah, so but with all sort of grants that are going through.
What was your contribution thing?
There would be contributions that we would make to other organisations or something like that. I'm just trying to think. It's a very small portion of our expenditure. I don't know, Kevin, would you be able to?
Yeah, usually what it comes down to is the notion of what actual conditions are attached to those. So contributions, we don't make many of those, which are reasonably small in amount, which are usually more generic by nature and unconditional. Grants usually are under certain conditions and attachments, such as the Heritage Fund grants, where they're for specific purposes. So majority will be grants. Under that notion, sponsorship obviously has a notion of naming rights or attachment back for council, some benefit back. Yeah, but contributions, I can't actually think of any off the top of my head right now. Yeah.
It's a very small little number.
Yeah.
And just on the pie chart, Auckland Transport's got 13 million budget for intangibles. Can you tell me what intangibles we get for 13 million?
So that's generally to do with, would be with things like computer software, and that's probably around the hop card, etc. And the software that works around that, that's an intangible asset. So, for example, at Auckland Council, the work that's happening on Nucor is an intangible asset. So we would capitalise that.
But is that not up there, in the top left? We've got Nucor up there at 41 million and other IS projects 20 million.
Yes, but remember, Auckland Transport is a separate entity, so they would have their own budgets.
And just on the same pie chart, Waikato 175 MLD expansion 4 million for water care. What does that mean in English?
If I remember correctly, that is to do with the bringing the water from Waikato.
I thought.
Yeah.
That's the water uptake that we've been
Yeah.
waiting for 3 years. So how does it cost $4 million?
That's just the expenditure in this year. If we need to, we need to check up with Waterkey.
I'd like to know what that 4 million's been spent on, because as far as I'm aware, we ain't doing anything. Yeah.
Still going ahead with consolidated.
Huh?
would be operating.
Watercare is still going ahead with gaining consents, even though
Yeah.
they don't
Yeah, but-
intend to uplift them at
Yeah,
this
no, no,
stage.
it's the cost, $4 million for what?
We'll get some details.
We'll get some details.
We'll get back to you.